Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcus Aurelius, and this is Dwarf Fortress 2014, Anvilquested. And a lot has happened since the last episode, so for the next couple episodes, we're probably just going to be talking about the changes. What that means is there will probably not be a lot of gameplay, so if you have the attention span of a 6-year-old, you may want to skip a couple episodes, though I do think that this is valuable information, so if you can, I highly recommend you watch. Before we do anything, however, we are going to profile a dwarf. Now, we have a lot more new dwarves. We actually have 134 named dwarves at this point. Our fortress itself has 180-some dwarves in total. 113. Number 113 is Silver Haze. So let's go to units. Silver Haze Figodnish. Silver Haze has 22 kills, all animals, and all either in the Gilded Hill or the Grand Walls. His mighty defeats include 2 chinchillas, a peregrine falcon, a bunch of giant eagles, 1 peach-faced lovebird woman, a giant badger sow, a rattlesnake, a giant armadillo, and a black mamba. Oh, he also got an impala man. That's very cool. Silver Haze is the wife of Barry Lefreak. And Silver Haze's uncle is Blecto Bagum and Thorin. Also, well, that's it. He's on friendly terms with a number of our current fortress inhabitants and has no enemies. Lovely. Silver Haze Figodnish has been happy lately. She admired a very fine door lately. She slept in a great bedroom recently. She had a pretty decent drink lately. She has been satisfied at work lately. She is 27 years old, a young dwarf, born on the 23rd of Slate in the year 127. Her very long hair is tied in a ponytail. She has a round chin. Her nose bridge is concave, her somewhat short ears are free-lobed. She is average in size, and her somewhat narrow copper eyes are slightly sunken. Her lips are thin, her head is somewhat tall, her hair is chestnut, and her skin is copper. She is indefatigable, but she is flimsy. Silver Haze likes hornblende, sterling silver, melanite, and batmen for their haunting cries, such as, "I'm Batman!" When possible, she prefers to consume sheep cheese and fisherberry wine. She absolutely detests flies. She has a shortage of patience. She personally is a firm believer in the value of tradition, views loyalty unfavorably, finds maintaining decorum a silly, fumbling waste of time, and values sacrifice. She dreams of creating a great work of art. Silver Haze, by the way, is one of our new militia captains because of all the kills and her military ability. And I guess that's what we should do right now, is we should introduce all of our new dwarves before we go any further. So I think I ended the last episode with Torgar Hammerstriker. He was the most recent that we discussed. So let's move forward. Actually, I'm going to talk real quick about my policy. Because we have 162 dwarves and 7 dwarven children, but many of them are not named, and the naming train is kind of slowed down. I am going to start when a dwarf dies. I will resurrect them as the second coming of their dwarf, or in the case where you gave me 2 names, a male and a female, if your reincarnation is a female as opposed to a male, you'll use the other name. So that's how that's going to work. Also, I've made a decision that all named positions, military, basically everything but unassigned, has to go to a named dwarf. So even if I have an unnamed dwarf with 8 military skill and some weapon, they will not be in the military. Just to make sure that the named dwarves get all the action, basically. Alright, so the new people. We have Azrael II, Barry Lefreak, Haunter, Hyuga, Katarina von Ulm II, Leverquin, Madame Tentaclehammer, Nordal, Silver Haze, Vika, Ibracon, or Ibracor, I'm sorry. Or Wybracor. Zon McLean, Bloodruna, House II, Black Tweedy, Lizard of Oz, Mr. Frodo, Percival II, Polat, Bronzebeard, Daramos, Dreamslayer, Gustav, Hammurabi, Cabuis, Crackshot, Liquidor, Mason, Rex, Sir Falconlord. Sorry, it's a bit difficult for me because they're not all in a row. I've got named dwarves right next to unnamed dwarves, and the reason for that is because, of course, I name everyone randomly. I use the actual game to name people in the order they appear in the list, not necessarily in the order they appear in Dwarf Therapist. So let's talk about jobs for a second, since it's been a while since I've shown you this, I think. Okay, so we're up to 5 animalists. Remember, animalists now do everything having to do with animals. They butcher, they tan, they train animals, they take care of them, they shear animals and that kind of business. They milk animals. Then we have 1 armorsmith and weaponsmith. That's Marcus Aurelius. All of our military guys are named after themselves. Toshin's our broker. Dikiasune is our only carpenter. Fyodor's our clothier. We have 3 doctors now, of which Krager Kveldcharn is our chief medical dwarf. Between the 3 of them, we have all areas covered. That's Krager, Daggerel, and Byzantine. We have 6 engravers, Ray Joseph, Sygomantis, Yetahali, Urist Mikado, the Etruscan, and wife of Balder. Our food service has expanded to 6 people. Remember, food service now is farming, cooking, brewing, milling, pressing, cheese making, any basic job that has to do with food or the byproducts thereof. Maureen is our gem setter because he is a legendary gem setter, legendary +2. So I'm putting him to work as that. Our regular jeweler is Mikus. He's the one who cuts the gems, and Maureen engraves them, or that is, embeds them, encrusts things with them. Surreal Beliefs is the mayor, and the only reason he's happy is because I cheat, because I haven't completed one thing he's wanted since the beginning. Daz is our leather worker. Ursula is our only real mason. I mean, every unassigned is technically a mason, but Ursula's the only one who's allowed to actually create furniture and stuff. Grumzub is our metal crafter. We now have 10 miners. I just got tired of waiting for mining to happen, and I'll show you, probably this episode, what I'm up to. But there's 10 of those. Akiasta, Stephanos, Torgar, Hammerstriker, Ara, Edmus, Polat, JC Destroyer, Garner Redsword, Leverquin, Artguile. 2 nurses. Remember now, nurses are responsible for feeding wounded and prisoners and nothing else. So that what happens is someone who is wounded doesn't starve to death or dehydrate because no one's helping them and everybody's busy doing other things. And that's Fanglewolf and Tinfoil Cookies. They are chosen to be nurses because they have high affinity toward helping people. They get happy when they help people. Okay. We have a planter. I don't know why the hell we have a planter. You are actually going to be a food service. No, you're unassigned. Screw you. You don't have a name. Okay, we have 2 soldier trainees left, Sanctum Stone and Bromine Gear. They're just training up. I have no job for them currently at this time. Yosarian is our stonecrafter. And then, of course, almost everyone else is unassigned. Many who are named, many who are not named. Well, everybody who is not named. Camos is our woodcutter. Alright, so let's look at our military squads real quick. Because there's a few new ones that you need to get acquainted with. So we have Gordosh's Gorillas and Bumchafe's Bandits. You know them. There are 2 Mark's Dwarf squads. Now we have Oscar's Varangians, Mina's Mashers, and Silverhaze's Spikes. So Oscar's Varangians are Axe Dwarves, Mina's Mashers are Hammer Dwarves, and Silverhaze's Spikes are Spear Dwarves. Axe Dwarves are pretty much good for anything you need them to do. They can lop off limbs, they can fight goblins, they can fight forgotten beasts. They're generally good in all things. There we go. So that includes Oscar Benitez, Narian Wolf, Gotrek Gurnison, Elena Starbreeze, Tection, and the Mr. Me. You can see they're already gaining some skill. I've given them iron axes. Eventually those will be steel axes. None of my melee dwarves currently have armor, just so you know. Well, maybe the Varangians do. I'm not sure. I don't think they do, but they're gaining skill in it. Maybe they just came with that skill. Mina's Mashers all have silver warhammers because silver is a heavier metal than iron. So actually for a crushing weapon like a warhammer, silver is the best metal in the game without mods. And that's Mina Moonheart is the captain, Throsil, Krogai, Catnip, Garai, and Blunderbuss. And then finally, Silverhaze's Spikes. Those are spear dwarves. They have iron spears, soon to be steel spears, and the value of spears is that they are the best weapon for fighting large enemies like mega beasts and forgotten beasts because they have a tendency of piercing internal organs, which helps take those beasts down. For example, the hammer dwarves, they are not really going to be very useful against mega beasts and forgotten beasts because they just break bones, they smash things, but that's not really effective against a giant monster. An axe and a spear, much more effective, especially a spear. So these guys, Silverhaze's Spikes, I'm expecting high casualties from them because they are going to be the ones fighting the really, really tough monsters. And that is Silverhaze as the captain, Bavette Argon, Black Tweedy, Bloodruna, Haas II, and Percival II. So, Garai, that's the giant tick he punched to death. That was awesome. That was before he was even in the military. So the Varangians, all their axes. Mina's Mashers almost all have their hammers. None of the Silverhaze's Spikes have their spears yet. Alright. So the first thing you'll notice is a lot of brown. I have created paved roads around Anvilquested. A paved road is similar to a floor, except it costs less stone. Like a floor costs 1 stone or 1 block for every square. A paved road, I think, is maybe 1 every 3 squares. I'm not entirely sure, but it saves stone. And the reason why I'm overdoing it here is because if you'll notice, I want to cover up everything that I have down here, because if a tree grows and then we cut it down, it opens up a hole into our fortress if there is something underneath it. So a tree will not grow through a paved road. That's why I'm doing this. Because I'm getting tired of covering up holes leading into my fortress. Which leads me to the project. Now, in previous versions of Dwarf Fortress, what people did is in the soil layers, once they breached the caverns, spores came up and the soil layers would start growing fungus and stuff that you could farm on and animals could eat it. And they would clear out huge rooms in order to have a tree farm. And by trees, I mean underground trees like giant mushrooms. Because in the previous version, they were only 1Z level high. So you could basically dig out this giant room and you'd have a never-ending supply of wood in the form of mushrooms that kept growing. However, you'll notice that in this new system, I don't have any mushrooms growing. In fact, I have nothing growing but some plants. I mean, this looks like a mushroom, I guess. Let's see what this is. It's a young goblin cap. I don't know what the deal is. But if you want to see the caverns, this is my hotkey to the first cavern layer. This white thing here, this is a mushroom. Now look at it. This is the top of it, and it goes... So this one's too high, but I've seen some. It's like this one here. 1, 2, 3. 3 high, at least. So these mushrooms can grow very large. They can grow very high. Whatever this yellow thing is here is also very high. It's a fungi wood. So the project, let's go back up to the top. The project is an experiment. And that experiment is, if I create a high-walled room in order to put fungus, will I get large mushrooms growing? So here's what I've done. Let's go through. Nothing's really changed here. We have a ton of dogs. We're actually butchering quite a few of them because it's slowing down the FPS and I don't need all of them. And the same thing with all of my turkeys. I'm basically killing all of them except for those needed for breeding in order to get leather and meat. Other than that, nothing new here really. I've got some good arrangements here. I've got bags and bins, barrels, bins, or bags and chests, I mean. Minecarts and wheelbarrows, furniture, food, 2 farmers' workshops now. Okay, but here is the project. So I was cutting out this place here to get stone. I need chert. So the project solves 3 problems. 1, it gives me a bunch of chert that I need to make blocks because I've decided that I want to make all my furniture and all my outdoor stuff out of chert, and so we need a lot of chert. And chert is only found on the first few floors. As you get further down, the stone changes. So that's problem 1, but I solved a lot of chert. Problem 2, I need iron ore. Okay, so I need to dig out a whole large area to get iron ore. And finally, problem 3 is I want to start raising animals. I want to start raising yaks, llamas, maybe alpacas, to shear them, to get milk, and for meat. So I need a lot of space to do that. And I also want to expand my underground farming so I can start growing a lot of fiber producing plants so I could start doing my own clothing industry without having to trade for cloth. So I have decided to repurpose my exploratory mining into what I call the project, which when it's complete will be a 4 Z-level high antechamber held up by 6 pillars that will be an indoor farm and animal grazing area. You can see I've got 1, 2, I'm down to my 3rd floor. It'll eventually end up here. So the plan is, when all's done, I'm going to basically open up this floodgate. This is going to be dug out and this is going to fill with water. Then I'm going to have this floodgate, and this is a floor grate. This is a wall grate here. So I'm going to open this floodgate, and all the water is going to fall down here, and it's right in the middle of this room. So the water is going to fall, and it's going to evenly spread out. Now the entrance to this area is here, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a little entranceway here, and it's going to go down 3 Z levels at a ramp. And I'll explain to you why I'm going to do that. Because this area at the bottom floor is going to fill up with water. But I only need 1. You know how the water goes from 1 to 7? I only need 1 water. That's enough to muddy the floor so that it'll grow spores, it'll grow trees. I can graze animals. I can start farms. So I'm going to have to touch every single corner of it. So some parts are going to be higher. And then finally, I'm going to dig, when I get to the bottom floor down here, I'm going to dig an escape hatch out with another floodgate. And it's going to lead to the edge of the map where I'm going to, it's an exploit where you carve a fortification into the edge of the map and all water just disappears out of the edge of the map. So that's how I'm going to fill it up with water, just a 1 Z level high, and then I'm going to let all the water drain so it'll turn into mud. And I'll have this giant 4 Z level high farm area where I'll be grazing animals, trying to grow mushrooms, giant mushrooms, and I'll also, at the bottom floor, I'll dig out more area, maybe over here, or maybe, well, in the bottom floor I'll have more room, so to the south, and I'll just put stuff that only needs 1 Z level, like farming and animal grazing, but I'm going to try to really grow giant mushrooms in this part. So that's the project. So in the next episode, we are going to discuss further events that are happening below these floors. And at some point, we're going to complete the project, and we're going to have a ton of iron ore, a ton of chert, and we're going to drop the water. And of course, I'm going to let you watch that because it could end in tragedy and tears, and that's always entertaining. So once again, I am Marcus Aurelius. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.